Hey guys, what's happening? We got us another internet historian called Man in Cave, and it's an hour 10 minutes long. So sit back, relax. We're gonna be here for a while. Let's see what's up. What is the video game?
In
By
the
the way-
state of Kentucky,
By the way, I have no idea what Man in Cave is for.
there is a cave that every now and then
Okay.
demands a sacrifice.
An evil cave.
January 30th, 1924.
Oh, we're going back
A
in
man
time.
walks towards the cave with a kerosene lamp in his hand. He hangs up his jacket and ducks into a 5-foot opening.
Why?
The inside of the cave is narrow. He has to drop down on his hands and knees, crawling through a passageway filled with jagged rocks and choking dust.
Could be a good movie.
Then down a chute he had cleared out months earlier.
Gotcha.
All of the daylight is gone from here, and this lantern is his only source of light.
Shit, if that dies
Ignoring
out.
the loose limestone rocks perched directly above him, he is now 100 feet in, and here he reaches the turnaround room. Now they call this the turnaround room because this is the juncture where even experienced cavers say, no thanks, and turn
hell?
around. Because to continue on means going through this, the squeeze, a gap in the stone of only 9 inches.
Jesus Christ.
For reference, here's a subway sub.
That's insane.
Going through, he would look
I
exact.
mean, that's insane. A lot of people, I know, like some people died like this, some very horrific ways. I don't know what's up with people being obsessed with caves. I
like
have
this.
no idea.
His arms will need to be completely at their side, and he will need to exhale so that he can reduce the size of his torso.
Jesus Christ.
Gradually, bit by bit,
You're asking for trouble.
he disappears into the hole. His clothes are caught on sharp gypsum crystals, hooking into him and threatening to hold him in place. But using his feet like paddles, he pushes through. He reaches a wider opening at the other.
Wait, is that the guy, what's his name? The guy who
Paddles.
does the
He
icebergs? I think it is. It's a good channel.
He
I think
reaches
that's
a
him.
wider opening at the other side, then crawls forward towards a ledge. Illuminated here is a 10-foot drop. A rope is already secured around a boulder, which allows him to rappel down. His worn-out leather shoes touch the ground.
Okay.
This is as far as he can go,
But
and
why?
it is time for work to begin. What he is working on is another opening. At the moment, it's too small for anyone to fit through,
Oh, I
but he
see, I
will
see.
chip away at it until he can shove himself right through the other side. Because on the other
He's
side
passionate.
is this. A magnificent and otherworldly cave structure
I
that
get
will
it, I
be
get it.
irresistible to tourists.
That
Every
makes
day
sense.
for months, he has been removing rocks from this crevice.
Okay, that makes sense. He's not doing it just because he's crazy. There's actually
him,
like
This
a
is
plan
all
behind
just
it.
routine. So he eases further into the gap. Carefully, he contorts his body through. Rocks compress the sides of his
man.
torso so close
If
that
you're
his arms are
claustrophobic-
pinned to the side of his body.
this is not happening.
He once again paddles his feet to inch down. Then, about halfway, he stops.
Oh no.
The lantern. It's starting to dim.
Uh-oh.
He will need to go all the way back to the surface to refuel the thing.
Unless he
sighs.
doesn't do it.
He slowly shuffles back out, pushing the lantern with his shoulder. Then, oh no. Dim, crack, darkness. He has knocked over the lamp, and it has broken.
Uh-oh.
Now, the man didn't panic.
This could be a good movie once again.
He had been caught in the dark before, and he could make his way back by feel alone. So
After all, it's pretty tight, right, the cave, so unless you got like that big room, so it's not so bad,
he
I guess.
continues worming
You
out,
can't really go into many places.
leveraging his foot against what he thinks is the cave wall.
Oh.
But that is not the cave wall. That is in fact a rock protruding from the ceiling. As soon as he puts his weight against the rock, it breaks loose. A solid piece weighing
Stuck.
15 kilograms lands directly
Yeah,
on
you can't
his
really
ankle.
reach it, you know?
It aches. but he's okay. It doesn't feel as though his ankle is broken, just badly bruised and caught underneath the rock.
But still, can you move?
So he shuffles to move the rock away. Suddenly, gravel. A lot of gravel. It falls onto his feet, his legs, his torso, and the weight of it all forces the wedged rock deeper into the gap underneath his foot.
Oh boy.
Pinned.
He's dead.
He tries to push forward. He cannot. He tries to inch backwards. He cannot.
Shit.
He is stuck.
I mean, that's like the stuff of nightmares. You're stuck there? Youch.
This is Sand Cave. This man is Floyd Collins. He
Can you find the skeleton there?
is trapped in absolute darkness.
Unless it made it
60
out.
feet deep below the earth. All
Oh,
of
shit.
his limbs held in place at the very bottom
Wow, we got
of
graphics.
this.
Hey, there's some water. Right, the turnaround room, yeah. Okay, so this whole video is about this guy then. I mean, that's... Again... Ooh, Jesus Christ. So, number one, that's a huge-ass cave. He has to, like, climb up a lot. On the bright side, it's like a straight line, so he can't really, like, deviate and go somewhere else, get lost. He just, like, straight line back, you know? So, at the very least, you know?
But before I tell you what happens next,
Ads?
ad time. Speaking of people trapped in a cave,
Let's see it.
World of Tanks. World of
I never played it.
Tanks is not only the best game I have ever played, it is the only game I have ever played. It's like cars, but tanks.
Thanks.
Picture this. You're a hot new T-3485M, and you've just joined the battle because some Cromwell B tank-bagged your entire family. It's time for revenge. You must use strategy. You must use
Doom music.
You must use your wits to defeat your enemies.
Jesus Christ.
Use long range or short range. It's
Ow.
available on console, but I want you to get it on PC.
Of course.
Imagine a world war, but there are tanks involved this time. Yeah, now you get it.
Gotcha.
When you've seen as many messed up tanks as I have, you get a little cynical about the world. My God, I'm gonna be sick. Look at all the different tanks. You can
That's a lot of
collectivize and
tanks.
customize them all. Massive battles where you can constantly team kill and ruin other people's good time.
That's not good.
Good Iron Engine is
Just that was worth it.
historically accurate, especially the Japanese robot tanks. Ooh, look, the tanks are kissing. Progressive. Use the invite code TankMania and get the Excelsior. 250k
The
credits.
guy yelling
Other
kills me.
stuff. Go to the link in the description and use the invite code TankMania. Here's what you do. Get World of Tanks. Put that on one screen. Then, on a second monitor, you'll watch the next
There you
hour
go.
of this video while you play the game. Perfection. I'm contractually obliged to say thank you for being a friend. Sarge, no! Tank's empty, kid. Go on without me. No, use your repair consumable. It's too late, kid. Tank care of my family for
Tank care.
me. No. Get
Is
it,
that-
get it. Add over.
Gotcha.
Collins is still in the dark, unable to move. His left arm was pinned underneath his torso, his right wedged
By the way, this is a much more serious kind of video.
rock ceiling above.
So far, we're like they were
Beneath
pretty
him,
funny, but this
sharp
is like
crystal
interesting,
shards
you know?
dug into his skin. Ice thawed, traced across the ceiling, and dripped down directly onto his face,
That's not so bad. It could be like used as water to drink.
pooling underneath him.
Oh wait, that's
The
bad. You
water
could
was
die.
a consistent 54 degrees.
Oh Jesus.
Floyd tried to breathe calmly in the concentrated dark. When he did attempt to shuffle, more gravel and rocks would tumble from above and pile onto his feet.
Dude,
So
you gotta have
nothing would
nerves
work.
of steel
He
for
clawed
this,
at
man.
the cave walls till his
Because you can't panic in the situations. If you panic, it's only gonna make it worse. You gotta like really like you did. Calm down, take your time, think it through, and just like come up
fingertips
with a
were
solution.
bloody,
Hopefully,
and he realized that there was only one option left.
cut off his
Call
neck.
out for help. But wait. Who is Floyd, and why did he even go into a dangerous cave?
Well, we got that. We're
Floyd
back.
has been exploring the caves of Kentucky since he was merely 6 years old. And as he grew up, he gained a reputation for being a very daring caver. He would dive into some hole on one side of town and emerge miles away on someone else's property.
Sup?
He grew up and he became embroiled in the Kentucky Cave Wars.
What the hell is that?
Now, there's way too much to go into here, but the summary version is there's this huge network of interconnected caves
Oh, shit,
called
look at
Mammoth
that.
Caves. It's actually the largest cave system in the world. And there's a city right in the middle of it. Cave City. Real name. So, of course, there are dozens of cave entrances on private property all over the place. Now, farmland in this region has very poor soil, and things do not grow well here. So, cave tourism as a source of income quickly became the prominent thing. However, a problem. There are a very large number of caves, but there are only a limited number of tourists. So competition rapidly escalated. Visit my cave. No. Visit my cave. Big signs were erected saying, tourists, come to me. Mine is definitely open. Mine is the best. But then competitors would respond by saying, hey, by the way, we're open, but don't go to that one over there. It's really shitty. In fact, it's dangerous. This kept going further. By the end, they were blocking off the trail to each other's property, beating each other in the streets, and hiring people called cappers who would dress up as policemen and tell tourists, no, you can't go in there. That one? No, it's illegal. Despite the fierce competition, Floyd found a cave on his property and he started advertising it to tourists.
That's why he wanted the
of course, very few
cave behind the wall there.
All right, he thought. What if I found something really special and unique? Then surely people would have to come to my cave to see it. So he kept exploring and exploring until he found this hollow. Right. It was filled with...
You know, it would be funny if, like, on the other side of the cave, there's, like, a huge-ass entrance that's, like, super easy to get to. That would be, like, really funny if that happens.
Big gypsum crystals. And when you were in there, it felt like a completely alien world.
Wow, nice.
But it was barely accessible. This small tunnel is the only way in. He would need to dig for months to open it up to tourists. But he knew he could do it. Back to the competition. They knew the value of this cave. They knew the potential.
They knew about it.
They wanted it for themselves, and they wanted Collins gone. One time, 5 of them just wandered onto Floyd's property and demanded he hand over the lease. When he refused, they just started beating the shit out of him. This only stopped when Floyd's brother, Homer, marched out with a shotgun and chased them all off.
Talking about The Simpsons.
But Floyd was not deterred. He spent 12 hours a day, every day, for months.
He was
clearing gravel and stone, chipping away at that passage. He would open it up to tourists, make his cave an incredible attraction, and make his dreams come true.
Interesting.
Hey! Is anyone there?
So there's Floyd in the dark, yelling out for help. He's at the start of a very tiring loop. Sleep, wake, yell. Sleep, wake, yell. Hours passed. His voice gave in. Arms tingled numb. Pain radiating up his ankle. Here he remained in the dark for the next 23 hours.
Shit. That actually drives you crazy, man.
Quickly you might wonder, how come no one's come for him after 23 hours?
Nobody knew he was there?
Well, Sand Cave resides on a 200-acre farm. There are several homes on this property with other families. One of them, of course, is Colin's house, where Floyd's father, Lee, resides. Now, Lee and Floyd constantly get into fights about how to run things. Lee wants his son to concentrate on farming, and Floyd wants to concentrate on cave tourism.
Gotcha.
Arguments would often get heated. And Lee was also a bit of a drunk.
That's
it was doubtful that he would even notice if his son, Floyd, was missing.
Jesus Christ.
Also not helping things, Floyd regularly lodged at 2 other homes on the farm. So when he didn't return to one host, they would presume that he was staying with the other.
Gotcha.
Even worse than that, he had recently spent 30 hours in a cave. So disappearing for this length of time wasn't seen as abnormal. Regardless, around the 23-hour mark, a few locals started to suspect that, hey, something might be wrong, and they went to check up on him. And here, they spotted his jacket still hung up.
Yeah.
Unusual. They went deeper. However, there was only one person small enough to make it as far as the turnaround room. This was a 17-year-old Jewel Estes. He refused to go into the squeeze, but it was close enough to call Collins' name.
Floyd!
But he was sleeping.
And Collins yelled back.
I'm here.
Oh, so they found him.
Estes emerges from the cave.
Okay, we know he's trapped, and we know where he is.
So, locals started to gather outside. Out of my way. Say a bunch of men who would each show up and take turns heading into the cave. in an attempt to reach Collins. But once they reached the turnaround room,
Nope. Nope.
Whoop. Whoop.
Nope.
Yep.
they would fail to reach him, emerging from the cave, soaked in mud and cursing. "Out of my way," they would say as they were heading in the reverse direction. So a few
Poor
more
kid.
hours passed. Word would spread around town. Dozens of locals from Cave City started to gather outside.
Somebody should charge them.
Over in Louisville, Floyd's 22-year-old brother, Homer, he gets a phone call.
Hello? I see. My brother. He's trapped in a cave? I'm on my way.
Homer jumps on a coach and makes his way to
Ads.
Floyd's cave.
We're back.
Homer struts up to the scene.
38
Dozens
hours.
of men are standing around outside. He ignores them all and marches right into the cavern, still wearing his city clothes. He makes his way in, down the chute, through the narrowing passages, down on his hands and knees towards the turnaround room. And when he arrives, he does not hesitate.
He goes in.
He squeezes into the hole, scrambles his way through to the ledge on the other side.
There
He
you go,
sees
nice.
Floyd below and slides down.
Bring him
to
some
meet
water, some food, you know?
Floyd!
Sup?
Right, probably wasn't that casual.
Oh, thank God you're here.
Homer took a moment to shine his light around the area and assess the situation.
You pull him
It
out,
was
you know?
not good.
Oh.
This rock formation is going to prove almost impossible to work around.
Really?
Alright, so let's have a look. Floyd is here. The rock is here, pinning his ankle.
The detail.
He's
Right.
surrounded by rubble, and there's a pocket of gravel above him, ready to
so
fall.
if they like remove the rock or something, everything's gonna fall down again.
However, because this opening is so small, there are only two viable ways of reaching Floyd and that gravel. Option 1, the most obvious, feet first. But if you do this, you have to kind of squat,
Oh,
and your own
shit.
torso
This is very complicated.
obstructs access to the rubble. Otherwise, option 2, come down head first. That will give you better access, but you're trying to move hundreds of pounds of gravel upside down.
Jesus.
Worse yet, there's barely an inch around Collins on either side, so good luck getting your arm down near Floyd's ankle to actually free him from the wedged rock.
I see,
Homer
I see.
calls back to the less daring rescuers standing behind him.
Quickly, some food and drink.
That's
They
it.
send it through. He hand feeds his brother a pint of coffee and a total of 9 sausage sandwiches.
Nice.
Feeling better?
Much better.
Then, Homer went to task. He began removing rocks and gravel, tiny scoop at a time, with the help of an old syrup can.
There you go. There you go. There you have it. That's what it looks like.
For the next 8 hours he toiled, first with hands, then, once enough was cleared, using a crowbar to scoop behind his brother, scraping away sharp protrusions as he went. It was slow progress. Virtually futile. As soon as he removed one rock or scoop
keep
of
on
gravel,
falling, yeah.
another would tumble from above and land in the new absence.
Maybe they could put like a board or something between the guy and like the ceiling there.
And it was exhausting work.
But I mean,
By
sure.
sunrise, Homer's arms and back were knackered. His lungs burned.
Jesus.
He was losing hope. Homer emerged hours later, shivering violently, skin bruised from his fingertips, but the cave barely yielded at all. However, something new. By the time Homer reached outside, he was greeted by a sea of approximately 100 men and women standing around, drinking, squabbling, and talking big game
Basically not doing shit, just
about how they too were going to save Floyd.
right.
The press was also present to help people gawk from afar. Now, Homer recuperated at a small tent near the cave's mouth.
Gotcha.
Strangers immediately crowded around him to ask innocent but, frankly, frustrating questions and offer unsolicited, obvious advice as well as wildly impractical solutions. He should try untying his shoes, said one. No, we should send him down with a contortionist who's got a mallet and a chisel. We should jerk him off, right, guys? All right, I made that third guy up. But you get the idea. And they started to argue with each other about their plans.
But nobody's
Hey,
doing
how
anything.
about using dynamite? One clique formed, insisting that it was a great idea. And another saying, no, the explosion will kill him, and the weight of the new rocks will surely crush him. They fought for a while until they started arguing about gas torches, which will cook him or asphyxiate him, or the gas will poison him. But by far the most common suggestion, of course, was amputation. Never mind that the foot itself was unreachable, and never mind what the blood loss and shock would do to Floyd's weakened body, and never minding even more that Floyd was strongly reluctant to the idea.
Whatever you do, don't cut my foot off.
All of the squabble would not have gotten on Homer's nerves, except that not
So you know, I'm thinking maybe like another way into the cave from the other side actually, and just like try to like pull him out from his legs.
one of them would just brave the damn cave and continue shoveling away the gravel. The formula was always the same. Brave heroes go in with food and supplies, then reach the turnaround room and
they
immediately
fuck off.
lose their nerve, then dump the food just outside the hole, and then return back outside and go, oh, absolutely. No, he says, thanks for the food. Thank you so much. Yum, yum. No one would go through that squeeze. Dozens more men would try. All of them would fail.
Shit. Damn.
February
71
2nd,
hours.
9 a.m. So far, Homer has been the only person
So like 3
to
days.
have reached Floyd. And that would
Almost.
continue to be true until here we are at the Louisville Courier. There's a spirited young newshawk named William Miller. He's talking to his boss, and he's trying to convince him that it's a great idea for him to cover the story of the man trapped in the cave.
Listen up, boss. I'm hearing talk of a man in a cave. He's stuck down there, and I want to get down there too. Get to the nitty-gritty.
I know these like pictures, it's of like people from YouTube, but I have no idea who they are.
You hear?
This is an
I'm-
opportunity for
I
some good
think-
PR.
I might have seen this
I'm in.
guy
But I want us to
somewhere.
sponsor that rescue. Picture this. Man saved from cave by Louisville Courier, the finest newspaper in the state. That'll drum up plenty of business.
That's right.
24-carat idea, boss. I'll make it happen. I'll get down there toot sweet.
So off Miller goes to Floyd's cave.
He's gonna go
Back
in now.
over at the cave, Homer is sitting outside trying to recuperate. As Miller wanders up, he glares at the man in his city clothes
See, I don't know who that guy is supposed to be.
and answers every question
brother.
with either a grunt or a one-word answer.
This guy, I don't know who he is.
Sure.
Finally, he gestures to Sand Cave.
Listen, you want more information?
Yeah.
The hole's right
Go
behind
in.
me. Why don't you go take a look yourself?
Now, Miller is only 21, but he is a slender and determined man. He takes on the challenge. So he removes his suit, drapes himself in coveralls, and grabs a lamp. Miller slowly enters the cave. He finds himself stepping in puddles and having to correct his balance against the ever-softening walls.
Oh shit.
These were accumulating problems thanks to the gawkers outside who had lit campfires all around the
Oh
entrance.
boy.
That caused snowmelt, and the stable environment of the cave is starting to shift.
Oh shit.
But Miller makes it further than most. And all that's left is that final squeeze, and he's there. He stops. He takes a moment and decides to call out to Floyd.
Floyd!
Hearing there is someone on the other side, he feels ashamed not to try. So he closes his eyes and moves forward.
That's
His
it, man.
slender figure begins inching through. The crystal gypsum cuts into his elbows and tugs at his clothes.
Crazy.
He gets snagged. He's fluttering through the pools of muddy water. He stops, collects himself, and pushes on. He can barely inhale. If he gets stuck in here, he can only hope that someone else can come in from behind
Shit.
and pull him out by the legs. But eventually, he makes it through. Fantastic. He's now standing on the edge of a 10-foot pit, and he clumsily bumbles his way down. He sat right next to Floyd, ready to interview him. But Floyd didn't really
He needs
answer any
help.
of his questions.
Not like an
In
interview.
fact, he was incoherent. At the moment, he is sitting in a pool of water that is 12 degrees, slowly sapping his body temperature. He is dying from exposure. The cold is diminishing Floyd's mental faculties, and he can barely make sentences. So Miller took a few mental notes, and he left. He worked his way back through the squeeze, past the
Now he
turnaround
knows how
room,
to like use the squeeze.
and out into the daylight. He is covered in mud and scratches and numb head to toe. And when Homer saw, his hope reignited. Someone else had made it to Floyd.
You and me. Together, we can get Floyd out of there.
Let's do it.
If Miller hadn't gone to that cave, there's a good chance that Floyd's story would have remained an obscure footnote in the back pages. But the interviews and first-person accounts gave the audience a glimpse of something real. Fear, hope, desperation, the full range. And so from Los Angeles to New York,
Wow, really?
Floyd's story was picked up everywhere and described the Kentucky man's plight in sensational detail.
Interesting.
It was also the era when radio became a regular feature
Ooh.
for regular Americans.
Damn.
Radio allowed something new, hourly updates, letting people get engrossed into the story. So, mostly thanks to Miller, the story of Floyd over the next week would grow and grow, seemingly frothing over into every aspect
So, like, more people should come together and stuff, right?
of American life. The press at large would be clamoring over each other for every little extra scrap of detail they could get about Floyd. And everybody wanted to know, will this man make it?
That's right.
Back outside the cave, someone new enters the scene. Lieutenant Robert Burden, a thin but strong 33-year-old Louisville firefighter.
There you
Like
go.
Miller, he was able to navigate
More
the
help.
passages of the cave and brave the squeeze. Scratched up pretty good and drenched in cold, muddy water, he managed to get through. He grabbed the rope and confidently lowered himself to Floyd's position. It was not an optimistic sight. Floyd's condition
Spider-Man.
was deteriorating.
Well, we've got a heck of a problem here, but I think I can get you out with a rope.
Floyd nods in approval.
Go on.
We might just pull your bloody leg off.
Just pull my leg off then. Get me out of here.
Yeah, he gave up. He's
Burden
like,
returned
"Fuck
to the
this."
surface and faced the crowd. He announced.
We will attempt a rope pull.
The crowd murmured. It was dangerous. It would certainly break his foot and could altogether pull it off. If there are jagged rocks, you'll fill it, the poor man. Amongst the crowd, a doctor stepped forward. A rope pull could stretch his internal organs and cause them to rupture. You'll kill him.
Jesus.
But Floyd is dying of exposure down there.
Yeah, so
the situation
don't really
is
have a
becoming
choice.
desperate. Burden put caution to the side.
The time for strategy is over.
Yeah.
Now we try brute force.
Damn. Fuck. 79 hours. Holy shit. He's having visions. Who's that? Oh yeah, the rock. What's going on? Again, we got us some effects now, you know? The budget is there. Yeah. Pulls him into the abyss.
Floyd! Floyd! We're here.
He's getting
We're gonna
delusional.
Get you out of here.
After 79 hours in the cold water, he is delirious.
Delirious,
fading
sorry.
in and out of consciousness.
Damn.
Homer gave his brother some coffee and fed him a couple of ham sandwiches. That warms him up and gives him a bit more energy, and he comes back to lucidity.
Oh, much better.
I'm gonna put the special harness around you. Burden and Miller, they're here too. We got 3 more boys right up the cave, and they're all ready to pull as hard as they can to get you out of here.
Floyd was frightened.
I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna hurt.
He gave his brother some whiskey and a strong sedative to calm
That
his
was
nerves, and also to help him withstand the
whiskey was like the solution back then, right? For pain.
shock in case his foot is destroyed. Floyd took the opportunity to appreciate being surrounded by friends and family.
Go on. Do it.
All right, strap him up.
Homer tied the harness around Colin's chest and knotted the rope.
Ready?
Above, Miller is crouched at the top of the pit.
Ready?
Burden clenches the cord from further up the cave.
3,
The rope goes taut.
2,
Do it.
1.
Oh!
Instinctively, Floyd gasps. The force of 6 men pulled against the clutches of the cave. Floyd began to scream. His body was being pulled up from the rubble. The gravel was beginning to shift. Burden clenched his teeth.
Oh, harder!
Floyd screamed harder as well. Now, Floyd was trapped in a supine position, but the direction of the rope caused an upwards force that wrenched him vertically. His torso was being compressed
They should have had like some sort of a pulley system or something. I don't know if that even makes
and
sense.
bent against the ceiling of the trap. It would kill him. Floyd's screaming intensified, and through gasps was begging them to stop. The screams filled the echoing cave, but it did not stop. The agony continued. On and on, with
Jesus.
no progress.
Enough! Enough! You guys are killing him!
Homer pulled in the
said
opposite
stop.
direction to give his brother some reprieve. Somehow, Homer mustered the strength to altogether wrench the cord from the other men's hands. The rope went slack. Homer, Floyd, and the rope lay limp on the cave floor, panting and exhausted. No progress had been made.
Shit. Wow.
The cave would not let this man go. The futility of the situation sank in, and all they could do was leave for now and reassess. Everybody was shaken by the experience. Burden fainted as he crawled towards the exit. Most of the other men had to be carried away. Outside, the crowd had grown to 200. They buzzed and asked useless questions, and Homer walked dejectedly past them. He sat by thinking what he could do. The cause seemed hopeless.
Homer?
Then, someone showed up who could turn things around. He looked up to see a childhood friend of both his and Floyd's, Johnny Gerald.
Gotcha.
Gerald knew more about cave rescues than most.
Oh.
In fact, just that summer prior, he had helped untangle Floyd from a different snag. He was just the man for the job.
Nice.
All right, let me go see him. Well, look who it is.
Floyd perked up immediately,
Yay.
thrilled to see Gerald.
All right, let's see what we can do.
Gerald jumped down. For the next 3 hours, Gerald went back to the original plan of prying away rocks. His stamina was good, and progress was surprisingly good as well. For several more hours, he continued, just moving stone after stone. New one would fall in its place, and he'd move that one too. By midnight, he had enough room to shift position and clear some of the gravel that was at each side of Floyd's body.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Gerald would spend several more hours scooping. And it worked.
87 hours.
For the first time, Floyd's torso was now available. Then his hips, his upper thigh. For the first time in over 90 hours, Floyd was able to wiggle his arms, his
shit.
hips, and even that
That must feel so good.
trapped right leg,
Holy
though
shit.
it was very painful to do. In that one session, Gerald managed to move a half-ton of rock, but there was still a lot more to go.
Jesus Christ.
And that rock by his foot was still holding him
Yeah,
in place.
that's the problem.
By 2 a.m., Gerald was spent. He needed rest, and he was ready to head back outside.
Floyd, tomorrow, you're gonna be a free man.
Nice. Gives him
Now,
hope.
here you might think that things will become straightforward. They did not.
Oh.
Now that space had been
96
cleared,
hours.
Burden became convinced that if he could get down that passage again, he could free Floyd with another rope pull.
Oh, boy.
Fate deciding with both feet or just one. But when Burden tried to enter the cave again, he was sternly rebuffed by the locals. They were playing gatekeeper. They had been specifically instructed to not let anyone in, and they were especially opposed to Burden making another rope pull after word spread about the disaster of the first attempt. He tried to reason with them.
Tried.
Let me try the rope pull again. It'll work this time.
They wouldn't let up. Instead, they shouted obscenities and shoved him
That's-
in the other direction.
We're back.
Meanwhile, Gerald and Homer are incapacitated with exhaustion, and Miller was busy filing some paperwork for the Louisville Courier. Nobody else had the ability or the authority to take action, so Floyd spent all of that morning alone.
Hello? Is anyone there?
96 hours.
Help?
4 days.
Hey? Anyone out there?
Word spread about Floyd. Miller's reporting had been picked up by the AP Newswire, and they distributed it amongst their hundreds of partnered newspapers. For Miller, it would be the biggest moment of his career. But he didn't stop to pay it mind. He spent the day hatching a rescue plan. Miller descended into the cave and set to work. When he entered, he found that the team before him had strung light bulbs all through the cavern,
Nice.
leading all the way down to Floyd.
That's good.
Very handy. A bulb was also put around Floyd's neck to keep him warm and make sure that he was never again left in the dark. Miller popped down to Floyd.
Floyd! Fancy seeing you here, buddy.
Reusing that syrup tin, he started offloading gravel into buckets. Those buckets were then passed up and down the cavern. And so it went on for the next 2 hours. Miller stopped for a break. He took some bread, milk, and whiskey, and sharing it with Floyd, they started to get to talking. Floyd had been in that cave for over 100 hours now, and seeing everyone working together, Floyd was overcome with a sense of hope and relief, and so he began spilling his heart out to Miller. Here is what he is quoted in the newspaper.
Let's see the story.
I believed I would go to heaven. I can feel that I'm to be taken out alive and with both my feet. I kept thinking, what would happen if the rock above me would fall? It caused me to shudder. I kept thinking to drive my mind to something else, but it wasn't much use. I couldn't do much to help those who came to help me, but I knew that a lot of people were willing to do all in their power. It gave me courage. Tuesday morning, I thought to myself, 4 days down here, and no nearer freedom than I was on the first day. How will it end? Will I get out? I couldn't think of it. I have faced death before. It doesn't frighten me, but it is so long.
Yep.
Tell them I am not going to give up.
That's good.
Tell them I'm going to fight and be patient and never forget them.
Wow, very nice. Well said.
Meanwhile, Floyd's story kept growing. Pedestrians would gather around corner store windows to read the latest bulletins. The press began using giant typefaces, commonly only reserved for declarations of war. Churches in all of the nearby counties were holding services for Floyd. Theaters even interrupted their shows to update the audience. Now, at the time, President Coolidge was in charge, and his Secretary of Commerce was a geologist, Herbert Hoover. Now, Mr. Hoover...
Hold on, what did it say?
Secretary of Commerce was a geologist, Herbert.
He'll go on to the 31st president and have them name after him. Oh, yeah. Hoover Dam. Yeah. Oh, don't get confused with J. Edgar Hoover. Okay.
Hoover. Now, Mr. Hoover followed the story very closely, and so it was likely that the president did too. Even Congress paused session to ask about the latest news from Sand Cave. By the end, the Floyd Collins incident would explode into the third largest...
Lindbergh flight, the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. I'm not sure what this one is. The Lindbergh baby. I heard about it, but...
between World War I and World War II.
Wow.
All of this excitement brought an inundation of people to Cave City. Old population, 690. Yawn. New population, 10,000.
Sound like you make some money with this.
Hotels ran out of food. Residents turned their homes into makeshift hotels, charging sizable premiums to let people nap in their bathtubs.
Jeez.
The banks quickly ran out of on-hand cash, and 4,500 automobiles impatiently sat, backed up for 2 miles from 20 different states to drive onto the Collins farm and turn their pristine green pastures into swampy parking lots.
Wow.
Deep below all those tourists, there's Miller, trying to free Floyd. Alright, a little bit of setup. Floyd, Miller, some remaining rubble, rock. For anyone to lift the rock by hand would be impossible because Floyd's body obstructs the hole.
Jesus.
Miller grabs a crowbar and shoves it through the gap. Now he's going to lever it off Floyd's foot. Cool. The crowbar is now wedged against the rock. Next, he takes a jack. He positions it on top of the crowbar so that it will be forced against the ceiling.
Nice.
However, problem. That jack is too big. It doesn't fit.
Smaller one.
Miller yells up the tunnel for a smaller one, but this took some time. And when it arrived, too small. Won't reach the ceiling.
Jesus.
But instead of sending for another one, Miller takes 2 blocks of wood and bolsters them underneath the crowbar. Right, so the crowbar now sits higher, it fulcrums against the block.
I appreciate the graphics.
And the jack...
I appreciate the visual aid.
All Miller has to do is expand the jack, which he will do using this spanner, holding it at the very tips of his fingers. Sounds easy. It's not. But that's the plan. Let's get him out of there. He turned the wrench. The jack expanded, and the crowbar took strain. The whole thing slid apart with a pang.
I knew it.
Floyd wasn't hurt, but Miller was contorting and exerting his whole body from back to fingertip. They tried again. Same result. Miller tried a new angle. Maybe this time, the jack pressed. The tension increased. And this time, the rock moved. It fucking moved.
Shit.
With each turn, the stone shifted a little more. Miller's hands shook with adrenaline, his face and body dripping with sweat. Pang. One of the blocks slipped, and the wooden tower went sideways. The rock painfully slammed back down on Colin's foot.
Ah, you'll get it next time, Miller. Try again.
Miller did. Again. And again. Adding blocks, taking them away, new crowbar position, change the jack position, every angle, all while Floyd was there, cheering him on.
Hey. Oh my god.
For the next 4 hours he tried. No progress. Miller was exhausted.
Maybe it's like a different jack, or like instead of a crowbar, like some sort of a different metal.
He couldn't do this on his own,
something.
but he was the only one slim enough to get in through the gap. The group decided to concede for now and return to the surface. They would take...
I'm surprised they didn't bring in like some kid or something to do all this, you know, they could like actually like slide in more or something.
Just a small break. But
maybe you don't want to like to have the kid watch some guy die in a cave though.
To everyone, like there was a clear way to get this man out. So Miller and Burden crawled back through the mud and the wines of the cave. As they made their way through, the cave was visibly sagging. The ceiling seemed lower. Parts were harder to navigate than before, especially
maybe they should like fortify it with something.
Now with their bruised and purple hands. But they made it outside to the fresh, early morning air. And here is where they're greeted with a new sight. Dozens of soldiers. The National Guard had arrived. In addition to the National Guard, a new figure was joining the story. Henry Carmichael.
Superintendent?
The National Guard, a new figure was joining the story.
Of Kentucky Rock Asphalt.
Henry Carmichael. Now, Carmichael was the general superintendent of the Kentucky Rock Asphalt Company. He had been on site since Tuesday, and he was appalled at how primitive the rescue attempts had been.
They should have used something
Shortly
better.
After Miller and co. had exited, Carmichael sent 2 men into Sand Cave to assess the structure's stability.
Ah, there you go, good.
They soon came back with a report. It was not good. Near the final squeeze, large cracks had formed. The ceiling was beginning to droop. Alright, so the following is a recounting of events from one of Carmichael's men, Casey Jones.
The guy from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Casey Jones, that was his name, no? What a coincidence.
Casey and another worker spent about
if
an
that
hour
was his
in the
name,
cave
I think.
surveying its condition, looking at the boards, the ceiling, the stability of the walls. He continued deeper towards Floyd. He was fighting against his nerves. The shifting of the rock pinged his every instinct to flee.
Damn.
But he heard Collins moaning ahead, so he pushed himself on. He managed to make it through the squeeze and he arrived at the 10-foot pit. Seeing Floyd trapped, he tried to ignore the pebbles that were tumbling behind him.
Please, come down.
I can't right now, Floyd, but I will when I get back.
Behind Casey, his partner is begging to leave. Below Casey, Collins is pleading for help.
Shit.
Please, I'm so thirsty.
Okay.
Casey slid headfirst into the pit and hastily ladled Floyd some coffee. But Floyd rejected it.
No.
Rumbling intensified from above, and in that moment, Casey realized that this was not a plea for sustenance. Floyd knew that a cave-in was inevitable. Scared and approaching his 5th day trapped, he was completely at his wit's end.
You didn't want to die alone?
He knew he was about to be trapped in that cave, and he didn't want to be trapped alone.
For God's sake, Casey, come on, you'll get us killed.
Stay with me, please. Don't leave.
Casey looked into Colin's eyes, set the coffee down, and pulled himself out of the pit.
Shit.
He wiggled underneath the sagging ceiling and crawled towards the turnaround room as fast as his limbs could scramble against the cave walls. He looked back to see the passage closing like a maw.
What?
Reflections from the bulb shining around Floyd's neck were no longer visible.
I
Instead,
had no idea.
just sobs could be heard, muffled from behind the rocks.
Yo, that's crazy though, man. I thought the passage would be safe, but I guess not.
Miller and Burden are
They have to go from the other side to get them from like the other side of the that crystal cave.
in the late morning, confident that today would be the day that they saved Floyd.
Yeah,
They
a
had
bit
some
too
new
late.
equipment too. Some wire to wrap around the wooden blocks to prevent them from slipping.
Nice.
And they changed their mind about that acetylene torch. They'll use it to burn away 2 rocks that had previously blocked their way. But when Miller got to the turnaround room, all of that optimism left him. The entrance to the squeeze was now just a pile of debris.
Shit.
Miller froze, staring at it for a long while. Then he sighed and did the only thing he could think: attempt to move some of the stones. But each adjustment led to more rocks just tumbling down and landing in that space. He persisted until... crash. A large chunk of clay landed onto his feet. Recognizing the danger, Miller returned to the surface.
Again, this would be a good movie.
15 minutes later, he emerged from the cave with a bloodied-up nose and bruises down his back and shoulders. Burden caught sight and races over to him. Miller just says, "For God's sake, just don't let Homer or anyone else back in there." Now, he didn't actually need to worry about Homer going back in there because he was sidelined with illness. But he did, however, need to worry about Gerald because he was furious. Gerald had warned everyone that putting dozens of people in Sand Cave would cause a collapse. It certainly did. The rest of that day would be wasted, as men threw blame around and screamed at each other about how to handle the cave-in. And Floyd spent the rest of that day alone.
118 hours, holy shit. I'm forgetting this, like, this whole time, like, you know, 5 days, whatever, you're not moving, you're just standing there. Maybe you can move, like, his arms a bit or, like, his hands a bit, but Jesus. I mean, you're, like, pissing yourself, you're shitting yourself, you know what I'm saying? Like,
surveyors continued checking the cave throughout the day. By the evening, Carmichael had ordered everyone to an assembly. Gerald took the floor. He was going to try one last daring rescue. He boldly announced his plan and an ultimatum.
Listen up. There's death down there. The walls and ceilings are crumbling. Unless you're determined to take the biggest chance you ever took in your life, tell me now and stay outside.
Next, they told all the Gawkers to get the fuck out of the cave, clear off. And over the next 8 hours, Gerald would enter and leave Sand Cave at least 5 times, chipping away at that pile of debris. In the woods, men sawed trees and chopped logs to shore up the cave walls. Underground, the crew reinforced cracks and wobbling boulders with fresh strips of wood. Gerald assessed that about 4 barrels of rocks would need to be moved, and piece by piece, they made that happen.
man.
Steadily, they managed to move enough rock.
The guy in the cave is very lucky to have, like, friends like these, you know, or, like, people who are willing to help him out big time.
To allow
if it weren't for them, you'd be dead, long dead.
Gerald to get within earshot of Floyd.
Bad news. We can't reach you. But hold on. We're coming.
Stone by stone, they continued.
Can they still fit in that crevice there?
After a few hours, the light of the bulb around Floyd's neck was peeking through. A couple more hours, enough room for Gerald to squeeze through.
Okay, that's enough.
There you go.
Floyd, I'm going for now. But when I get back, I'm gonna get you out of there.
Exhausted but still determined, Gerald...
That's what it is, you know, determination. I mean, this is what it does, man. When you're determined to do something, nothing can stop you, know what I'm saying?
Crawled back up the cave and marched to the men huddling outside.
This is like one of those lessons.
Gather the equipment, and in an hour's time, it's gonna be me and Floyd coming out of that cave.
130
Gerald entered Sand Cave for his final time. The walls had been reinforced, but mud and water was accumulating everywhere. He waded through it and pressed on past the danger of the sagging ceiling. With determination on his face and a grease gun clutched in his right hand, he scrambled towards Floyd. But before the final squeeze, he stopped. It was all gone.
What?
The cave ceiling had crumbled once again.
This story is going back and forth. Like I said, this would be a good movie.
Gerald,
maybe there is a movie about this, I have no idea.
Stared motionlessly at
wow,
the
that's crazy.
Then
though.
he began to yell.
Yo, I mean, you know, in moments like these, when you just want to, like, give up, it's like, I can't believe this, I'm not doing this again, it's impossible, whatever. I guess these people didn't, and...
Floyd!
A rock disconnected from the ceiling and tumbled onto Gerald's head. Luckily, just a small one. He rubbed his scalp and called out again.
That's what it is.
Floyd.
You can't give up.
This time, a moan. It rumbled from the other side. Fearing that his friend was slipping out of consciousness, Gerald willed himself against the cave,
No way.
launching the debris behind him with force. He ignored the pain from being struck on the head and clawed at the stone pile. He carried on this way for several minutes.
Oh, this guy's a hero,
until
man.
a sharp, heavy rock dropped from the ceiling and landed squarely on his back. No more than 15 minutes later, Gerald returned to the surface. Defeated.
I mean, he tried his best, man. Jesus. 142
Only
hours.
after the cave-ins did they start to think about all of the things that they could have done.
Wait, why didn't we rig a portable telephone line? That would have been incredibly simple here in 1925.
Yeah, why have we been running in and out to deliver updates?
Why didn't we give him an AM radio? He could have had something to listen to and receive messages of support from the public.
True, yeah.
Wait, why don't we rig up a tarpaulin so we could lift his torso up so he wouldn't be slowly dying of exposure?
Oh god, why didn't we run a feeding tube? That's also a technology we have in 1925.
All too late. Now
True,
what?
huh?
The one
Shit.
route to get to Floyd is closed forever.
Go the other way around, man.
That meant two options. Number one, capitulation. Surrender him to the cave. Or number two, dig down from directly above Floyd.
Oh, shit.
Now, the prospect of digging from above seemed almost
Wouldn't that
fanciful.
kill him, or... I guess you can, like, not just exactly on top of him, but, like, on the side or something.
At least, it did in the beginning. But luckily, they had some help. Owing to Miller's reporting, Floyd had become practically the most famous person in the country.
Wow.
The rescue had become a high priority for the governor of Kentucky, Lieutenant General Denhart.
He's going to murder his girlfriend. What the fuck? He's brought to trial, but results in a hung jury.
Enters the...
Something retrial. Verner's brothers tracked him down and shot him to death. They were all acquitted. Jesus Christ.
He's been updated on the situation,
Before
and
his
following
retrial,
shortly behind him is a small army of miners and engineers. He declared to the despondent crowd, "Gentlemen, I am here on behalf of the governor. The purse strings of Kentucky are open. Take this blank check and bring that
Holy
man
shit, a
out
blank check.
alive."
More ads. We're back.
Floyd, in that cold, wet confine, could not have imagined
Right.
the scale of the operation that was going on 55 feet above him. Authorities assumed control of Colin's rescue. Denhart gave Henry Carmichael the lead to dig, and Carmichael raced to get to work. He enlisted his employees, his fleet of expensive high-tech machinery. Professional groups were brought in from all across the state.
Wow.
Local townspeople were mostly excluded, and for the first time since Collins had been trapped, work was now about to go ahead in a systematic manner.
Good.
Everyone knew the plan.
Yeah.
Everyone had something
Non-stop.
to do, and everyone was working fast. But just as hopes
If only they would have done that from the beginning, but, you know.
were rising, they were once again
Oh
dashed
my
against
god, what now?
the rocks. They had all of this state-of-the-art machinery shipped in and assembled by the engineers and raring to go,
But,
and it was all worthless.
why?
See, the problem is, the cave drew air into it. These diesel-powered
Oh my
engines pumped out
God.
enormous volumes of choking exhaust. Within a day's operation, the cave would be filled with carbon monoxide, and Floyd would be dead from asphyxiation. Just as quickly as solutions would arise, the cave would parry them away.
That's crazy, huh?
It refused
It's like a
to
villain
let
now, you know?
this man go. So engineers and
It needs a sacrifice.
miners had wasted hours assembling everything, only to realize that they had to pack it all up and cart it away. Because the digging of a 55-foot shaft would be done with picks and shovels. Carmichael
Cool sound
didn't know
effects.
much about caves, But he knew a lot about quarrying, and he estimated that his team of 75 volunteers could dig and dredge at a rate of 2 feet per hour.
Okay.
If they worked around the clock,
30 hours?
they would be digging directly into the spot where Floyd lays within 30 hours. Now, was it possible that Floyd could survive for another 30 hours? Absolutely. Let's go. The first ton was moved, and at first, it was easy work.
Again, I love the graphics.
Just dirt and clay. Carmichael understood well that this was a race against time, so he watched
It's
them
going
in
to get
closely,
tougher and tougher.
and if they
ain't it?
seemed to be slowing down, even a little, they would be yanked out, and immediately a new worker subbed in.
Just throw him in, you know?
Nonetheless, the pace slowed. By 10 feet, the shaft narrowed greatly,
There you go.
which meant that only 2 men could work at a time. At 15 feet, they hit boulders.
There you go.
Pickaxes went in, and a system of pulleys and buckets had to be used to cart the rock
That's
out.
not easy work
Tracks
either,
were even
man.
laid to ferry the refuse to a dump site. Time passed. Hours passed. Night went to day. The day was hot. This was yet another problem, because it's early February, there's tons of ice still in the ground, and its exposure to the fresh midday sun meant that the walls of the shaft were softening and the ground becoming sodden. The pace of digging slowed.
Always something.
It was now only half a foot per hour.
Uh-oh.
Most anyone could do was watch helplessly on the sidelines and pray. Interestingly, though, there were a lot of people on the sidelines. Floyd wouldn't have believed that the space above him had turned into a literal carnival
that's
in
what I'm
his
saying.
honor.
Yeah.
Vendors showed up to sell hamburgers, hot dogs, and souvenirs. Families sprawled out over blankets to listen to hymns from local church groups. The local mountebanks sold moonshine and miracle cures.
Of course.
There was even a bloody juggler.
Wow.
And Old Man Lee was there, walking around, shaking his jar, and soliciting donations.
There you go. Somebody's going to
But
take
where
advantage.
were Homer and Burden and Miller during all of this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's back up a bit. People did not properly understand exactly how Floyd was trapped, and the news didn't help much either.
This is an actual diagram used. It has been simplified to the point of being totally wrong. In trawling old newspapers, we weren't able to find any accurate diagrams published for the public. So they're showing here it's like a picture. Okay, like the rock is like really, really freaking huge, and he's like he can't do this. They can't like actually dig like this because that wasn't the problem. This thing would always fall on him no matter what. So they can't really dig like this. I gotcha.
The obvious question started to arise: why hasn't he been rescued yet?
People are getting mad.
Just clear some gravel or pull a rope. How is this so hard?
Yeah, exactly.
Motive was
Easy.
attributed.
I heard they didn't even want to have him rescued at all.
I heard that they're doing all of this for publicity.
And Lee's activity of soliciting donations, remember from before,
yes.
further inflamed rumors.
That's right.
I bet Floyd isn't even trapped in there.
Just
These
doing
were
it for
all
the money.
real rumors, and they got worse.
You know what? I've heard he comes out at night, and then he just goes back in the morning.
Shit.
Other rumors included
I heard that after Floyd went into the cave, someone murdered him.
Others said,
I think they're withholding food and water from him so he dies.
This whole thing is a fraud.
As time went on, it was harder and harder to ignore the hoax claims. Then, people started to form righteous mobs, claiming the whole thing was a fraud, and they started to get nasty.
Oh my
In fact,
God.
2 people even went to the telegraph office and pretended to be Floyd, sending
Floyd's mother died years prior. Since then, his father Lee had remarried a younger woman. Floyd and his stepmother got along well, but he did not see her in a parental way. Uh-oh. The forger had no understanding of their family structure and just went with mother.
telegrams to his mother. Here's what it said. Quote, "Please contradict statements that I am buried alive in Sand Cave. Stop. Tell mother I am all right. Stop. Am coming home. Stop. Floyd Collins."
Oh boy.
Naturally, the AP published these telegrams unquestioningly, and now word is out to the press that he isn't actually in the cave after all. That made the authorities look foolish, and it could not go on. So, a hasty court-martial was arranged, and Homer, Miller, and Gerald were summoned. They hold one session on Monday and another on Tuesday. Lee and everyone else is cleared of charges, a retraction is written, and things carry on.
Thank God.
Generators rumbled, pumps churned out water. Men continued working in shifts and carrying away the earth. Here they are with strips of lumber to shore up the walls. They were only 25
Let me see that again.
strips of lumber to shore up the walls.
Shit.
They were only 25 feet down.
Wow.
The pace had slowed to 4 inches per hour.
Ouch.
In their desperation, they resorted to dynamite. But this did little to the boulders. Despite all these bleak circumstances, people's spirits were high, because everyone was keen for their turn to dig. And because they had one more thing to latch onto. He is probably still alive.
That's right.
Now, how do they know that? Okay, so remember that light bulb around Floyd's neck?
Yeah.
Well, it's powered by a simple copper wire. Bare copper wire is subject to very minute fluctuations in resistance. So, an engineer rigs up a radio amplifier to this wire to read the current and see those small fluctuations.
Right.
There they were.
Yep. So he's still
About
alive.
20 per minute. The rate of steady breathing. As his chest expands and contracts, they can read it from this device.
That's very interesting.
And so, they kept going.
Jesus Christ.
And going. And going. 30 hours was the original estimate. Now 144 hours had come and gone, and they were only at 44 feet.
Keep going.
Then,
Don't stop.
rain fell.
Of course.
Rain that mixed with dirt to make mud, much of which then froze to make ice. Ice which expanded and damaged the integrity of the shaft walls. Slowing down with every hour, they continued. Many more hours passed, and they were getting
360.
close. But it was now 15 days since Floyd was first stuck in that cave, and people had mostly lost hope.
Shit.
That excitement in the newspapers was tempering down. Visitors began clearing out from Cave City.
Let's get out of here.
Many still held on to hope, but their final lifeline, that light bulb, had burnt out. And it wasn't possible to do any more readings on the radio amplifier without
shit.
it.
It's all
No
up in
one
the air.
knew if Floyd was still alive.
400.
Another 51 hours would pass before, finally, they reached the 60-foot depth.
I'm in! Chisel!
A chisel is handed down. At 1:30 p.m. on Monday, February 16th, Sand Cave would open once again. For 17 days, Floyd had been trapped underground, stuck in the same position.
17 days?
4 days without heat or light.
Shit.
12 without food or water.
That shit drives you crazy, man.
But maybe the dripping of the cave water had provided him with some sustenance?
Hopefully.
There are stories of people surviving harsher extremes. Rescuers frantically tugged at rocks to widen the hole. Everybody stood by, absolutely silent, peering into that hole. Ed flashed his light into the gap, and eased himself in. Brenner aimed his light around the room, and then, finally, at Floyd.
Yeah, we did it.
The first thing he saw was a golden shimmer.
He's still alive?
It was not the light bulb.
Oh?
It was the reflection of Floyd's tooth. His mouth hung open.
He dead?
He was dead.
No way! After all this, he died? I was expecting a happy ending.
Brenner was helped out of the cave, and he delivered the news.
Shit, man.
Dead.
All that for nothing.
A coroner would later state that Floyd succumbed to exposure, and that they had missed him by just 3 days. About
wow, 3 days is fairly long, so...
same time that the light bulb had gone out.
I see. Maybe that's when he gave up. There was no more light. He's like, screw it, you know? Dead 24 hours when
But
found.
what would they do now with the body? The shaft walls were ready to fall inwards, and risking lives to remove a corpse was seen as just irresponsible.
Leave him there?
So the following morning, officials made a decision. Floyd would be entombed where he lay. The cave would keep...
So he's still there. Like I said at the beginning, the skeleton.
...its victim. Now this did not sit well with the family, but what could they do? The next day, they planned the funeral. The town emptied of people, and the shaft with Floyd at the bottom was refilled with soil.
It's hardcore.
But that's not quite the end of the story. But if you hung on for this long, keep holding on, because things are going to continue to get interesting. But first, let me do a wrap-up of where everyone is and all that stuff. Context. The Collins family already had financial hardship. Locals saw Old Man Lee scouring the rescue site for glass bottles. But the owner of the land, B. Doyle, and supposed friend of Floyd, was wholly unsympathetic. He erected a sign on the highway which said, 200 yards away, the body of Floyd Collins is imprisoned in Sand Cave. Then he began charging tourists 50 cents apiece for the opportunity to gander into the hole. It's 100 years later, B's dead. Let's call it even. Also, remember those claims of Kentucky being an open purse? Well, the state reneged on the deal. They refused to pay many of the rescuers, and most of them went home without any compensation.
Shit,
some of them did make some money out of the situation, though. They lucked into vaudeville gigs and roamed...
Type of entertainment popular in the early 20th century, featuring a mixture of specialty acts such as burlesque comedy and song and dance.
...the country, giving their first-person account. Miller, however, received an astonishing offer, a $50,000 contract from the Chautauqua Lecture Circuit, equivalent to the better part of $1 million in today's money.
Shit.
He declined.
Why?
He continued to work at the Louisville Courier-Journal. The following year, his coverage of Floyd's story earned him the Pulitzer Prize.
Wow.
Now the brother, Homer, he needed money and he agreed to do that vaudeville circuit. He stood on stage and regaled the audience about tales of his brother, their childhood, and the tragedy. But Homer made it known why he was up here on stage trying to get money. He had a mission.
I kept thinking of Floyd lying in the muck, where he had suffered beyond our power to imagine. I would never have peace of mind if he remained there.
Oh, he wants to pull
He
him
wanted
out?
the money to dig Floyd up and get him out of...
But why didn't they... Well, I guess they couldn't get him out when they dug the hole because they all agreed they wouldn't.
That cave. A couple of months later, he had it. All right, so back to Floyd. April 17th, 1920.
He's still alive in there somehow, you know?
7 miners showed up to the scene. They began to dig. Within a week, they had arrived at Floyd. And this time, they approached from the other side of the rock formation.
Finally.
That way, they could remove the rock pinning Floyd's leg. They lifted him up from his tomb and laid him down on the fresh air above. April 26th, 1920. Floyd was set to rest in the family cemetery. A stalagmite had been set as a headstone to mark out his plot. And there he lay. No, that's not actually where it ends. Okay, this is where it gets weird. 2 years later, 1927.
Okay.
Times had been tough for the Collins. So Floyd's dad sold Sand Cave to a dentist named Dr. Harry B. Thomas for $10,000. Now, Homer begged him not to, because at the time, the government was starting to buy up tons of land in the area and turn it into national parks. They had to pay at a very competitive rate. But Lee was becoming a bit old and senile by this point, and frankly, it's doubtful that he cared about Homer or Floyd or anyone else for that matter.
Shit.
It's 100 years later, he's dead now. Let's call it even.
Obviously.
So, the point is, in this land sale with Thomas, Lee agreed to a very odd clause. And that clause said, everything on that property belongs to Thomas. And should he wish, for example, to exhume a dead body and re-embalm it and put it on display in something really tacky like a glass coffin inside a cave, maybe, then that would be his prerogative. Lee signed yes. And Thomas did exactly that.
Oh my god.
Doyle made Floyd's corpse a tourist attraction.
Jesus Christ. That's very disrespectful.
2 bits of gander.
Imagine, like, that's your family. Like, you'll be freaking pissed.
Wonder at the incredible dead man who died in a cave. But to add insult to injury, it worked. Visitors returned to Sand Cave to gawk morbidly at Floyd. Within a few months, Thomas had turned Lee's failing farm into a successful business.
There's the coffin.
Now, the rest of Colin's family is horrified. They try a number of times to get Floyd returned to them, including through the legal system. But somehow, incredibly, the judge ruled in Thomas's favor. And so, there he lay for the next 2 years.
That's crazy, dude. Wow. What the fuck?
The cave was not done with Floyd.
True.
Until someone hatched a plan. 2 years later, it's midnight,
stole the body.
Outside Sand Cave. Footsteps can be heard rustling through the brush. Now, we don't
Probably
know
his
who
brother.
these two men are, but we know why they are here.
Probably his brother and...
To rob a grave.
Well,
They
maybe
sneak
not, who knows?
inside and clamber over the rocks in the darkness. Reaching Floyd's casket, they undo the latch and throw open the lid. There is his shriveled body. They throw him in a gunny sack, and they race off into the night. For 800 yards they carry dear Floyd, like a couple of sweaty Santas about to deliver a really terrible Christmas present.
Okay.
Panting, out of breath, knowing that they're going to get caught any minute, they reach the Kentucky Green River hillside. There's no time. With a 1, 2, 3, they launch his body towards the river, and Floyd goes sailing into the air, up, into the starlit beyond.
Right.
And landing in a bush. Oh, God.
Not even in the river.
The two men flee from the scene. Now, the next morning, Thomas notices that the body of Floyd is somewhat missing.
He got up and left.
Contacts the authorities. The police come, they dust the casket for fingerprints, and bloodhounds are given Floyd's scent and let loose into the hillside. A few hours later, they manage to find him, a tangled up mess near the river.
Poor
But this
guy,
time,
man.
with a leg missing.
Oh my
that
God.
same one that was trapped under the rock. So, despite his protest, it had been amputated.
Yeah.
Neither the leg nor the culprits were ever found.
Oh.
And while it would be nice to think that this was some well-intentioned duo that did this out of the kindness of their hearts to free Floyd, it's much more likely that it was an act of vandalism because Floyd was simply too much of a hot tourist attraction.
Shit.
The following day, Floyd was cast back into the cave, back into his box, and it was covered by a metal lid, surrounded by a metal chain, and locked with a padlock. He was now more trapped than he had ever been.
That's crazy, dude. Look at that.
This cave had spun fate once again to make sure that its victim would never leave. And so, time passed. Floyd's body would continue to decay. The rot from his body would eventually rot the casket too.
Oh boy.
And every decade or so, it
Floyd's body would wear out 4 caskets.
would need to be replaced. A few years later, he was no longer on display.
Thank God.
But even then, he remained in that box
Shit.
for many more years. In 1961, Floyd's Cave was purchased by Mammoth Cave National Park, and it was closed to the public. There would be no more visitors.
There we got color
The
now.
entrance itself to Floyd's Cave was closed with a steel gate and bolted, then welded shut. But the Collins family never gave up objecting to Colin's body being left in the cave. And here is where the story ends. In 1989, at the Collins' request, the National Park Service ventured into Floyd's Cave. Continuing on a more than 60-year tradition, a team of people worked over the course of several days to remove him from the cave.
That's crazy.
They took
dude.
him out, left the cave, locked it behind them, and laid Floyd to rest at the Mammoth Cave Baptist Church Cemetery.
Finally. Found some
After
peace.
64 years
The body.
in Sand Cave,
That's
he is now
crazy.
finally at peace.
Wow, dude.
The end.
Jesus.
Thank you to Wendigoon as Floyd.
Yeah, there
If
you go.
you don't let me out, I'm going to hire a gang of hitmen to come to your house and kill your family.
Samito as Homer.
The BTS meal McDonald's bag that has
I'm
McDonald's and
hungry.
BTS. Shut the fuck up. and eat some BTS, bro.
Ordinary things as Miller.
I'm enthusiastic, but would ultimately duck out the back exit.
Rusty Cage as Gerald.
Oh, well, hello there.
Yeah, I don't know these people.
Haven't seen y'all in
Just
a
the
while.
first guy.
Welcome to my new home.
And many kudos as Burden.
Hey, buddy. You right down there?
I can.
You a little sleepy?
I can. Yeah.
We get you a coffee?
Cold and
Little cup of Joe? Little cup of Joseph?
My mother was one of the best cooks I ever knew.
Joseph from a little sleepy guy?
That's an interesting
Also,
name.
by the way, in case you're confused about the channels, this is how it works now. And do not forget, World of Tanks, World of Tanks. None of this would have happened if
Gotcha.
Floyd had got World of Tanks.
Gotcha. Well, that was a very, very, very interesting story. I had no idea about this. We learned something today. They should make a movie out of this. It probably already exists. I have no idea. But man, what a story full of twists and turns. Just when you think they got him out, the cave catches him back in. The cave wouldn't let go. The guy was cursed to die in that cave. And I really thought that this is going to be a good ending. You know, like they're going to finally, after all these trials, they're going to like pull him out. He's going to be like, everybody's going to be super happy. He's going to live for like 100 years old. But nope, he just died there. That's it. And then, like, the cave wasn't done with his body. He just kept getting stuck in there over and over and over again until finally 89 or something? Jesus Christ, that's insane, man. What an interesting story. Once again, Internet Explorer, Internet Historian. He does some amazing videos. Long one, but very enjoyable and very informative, you know, as always. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you. Peace.